back, Firewood Addicts, to another episode of Travis Does Firewood. But this is the podcast series, episode 2 of Firewood Addicts, a podcast series. I'm here with Jim. Jim, say hi.
Hi, everybody.
And Jim, where are you calling from right now?
St. Louis, Missouri.
Welcome. And
Thank
how's the
you.
weather there right now?
We're kind of cool, about 40 degrees, sunny. So it's a pretty nice day.
Good deal. Thank you for being on the channel and with this podcast. I look forward to chatting with you soon. So without further ado, let's get into it.
Sure.
Jim, give us a little background of what your career or what do you do right now?
I am I'm retired chef, and it wasn't always planned to be a chef or a cook when I was in high school or stuff like that. So I just I was in carpentry, helped my parents build our lake home, and that didn't kind of work out because I was afraid of heights and still am. So that didn't work out, but I got almost there, so I learned a lot. And so, but I went to culinary school and went through a lot, and I worked in the professional kitchen for probably over 25 years. So
Very cool. Thank you. And so from being a chef and cooking, how does that play into or segue into getting into firewood?
It for me, as a chef and a cook, and as much barbecue as I've done, that segued into an idea of selling firewood as a kind of a specialty thing with guys who are in the barbecue circuit, and guys and gals, I should say, who barbecue and that kind of stuff. Folks who have the small pizza ovens or things like that. I know here in the Midwest, we like our barbecue just like a lot of folks do. So, however we can make it better, we do it. And so I've kind of always, if we were barbecuing, if we had a nice piece of oak or a log sticking around that was nice, we would just throw it on there just for taste. And so that's really the segue of what I did. And I really haven't been, out there with advertising and, that kind of stuff on, just very little with friends and family. And so that just kind of led to someone saying, hey, he's got some great cherry wood. That led to another person in the cooking business. And that led to one of my first clients, and who was a chef and does barbecue. And it was cool, kind of like you and I. It was kind of cool because we could talk the lingo and knew what I knew what he was looking for before he could really say it. So
there you go. So I heard oak, I heard cherry. What would be the main woods in your area that are used for smoking?
in my area, it typically we will use hickory, oak, cherry, maple, and pecan, and certainly apple. So different kinds of foods and different kinds of things that you're using, you don't have to use all of that at the same time, especially like chips and stuff. Typically, we'll just kind of throw in whatever we feel is best, and typically that's some hickory or apple, especially with pork or chicken, whichever. But yeah, those are pretty much the three main species here in the Midwest that we use is hickory, apple, and cherry, and oak. All that's for. So
Interesting. So are you saying that whatever type of meat that you want to smoke, that would depend, and so that would dictate what species of wood you would use to smoke it?
yes, from a culinary standpoint and a competition barbecue standpoint, yeah. But as far as just barbecuing, and it's not just smoking, it's barbecuing and
Oh.
grilling and smoking, and
Mm-hmm.
depends upon, you probably know what part of the country you have your boots on, of what kind of barbecue, smoking, or grilling anybody is doing. So it's, for us here in the Midwest, it's the three separate things. We're either smoking, in which we're doing real low and slow with like
Mm-hmm.
brisket and pork and that kinds of stuff, and which is real low heat and a real clean smoke. And then we're going into, from that, then you just do barbecue, where you just got the grill, you got hot coals, doing steaks or whatever, ribs or whatever, chicken. And then there's just plain grilling, where there's really no wood, except it's just your propane grill, and you just throw some chips
Mm-hmm.
on it.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Gotcha. Interesting. Yeah, I'm not. as- I, I would say smoking at that level, or like your barbecue, isn't that big of a thing in the Pacific Northwest. I know it's definitely regional, and people take their smoking and barbecue meats very seriously. So I'm definitely, like, I don't know much about it, but I do know from various channels on YouTube. Sometimes the customer, when they want wood, or wood, like log, or like pieces of wood for their smokers, that either they want it like to be fairly dry, or in the middle of being seasoned, or definitely they don't care whether it's dry or wet, or they prefer it to be a more or less green. Is that the case with your experience too, with a piece of wood too, with smoking or grilling?
it is, because if we're just grilling or doing barbecue, and searing, it's okay to have dry wood, where you just throw it on there and it sparks up and heats up and you get heat. As far as when we're doing smoking and we want a clean smoke, and the taste of the wood and the smoke and that pink smoke ring around the meat, is, yeah, then we kind of like it's semi-season, not like, sometimes we'll go and like take a branch off a tree, a oak tree, or a small one, or hickory, and throw some chips on there or something. So for us, it's kind of semi-green, semi-soaked, and even if we like have dry wood, dry hickory or dry oak or whatever, um, that's still good wood for us. So we'll just stick it in a bucket, or the chips in a cup to soak them for an hour or so before we get ready to go, and just throw them on there, and on the fire, and go from there. But yeah, yes, you are correct that it's different. Folks like different things as far as when they're doing it, and we can probably be really, really, um, ridiculously high sensitive with our meat and barbecue and what we're doing. So yeah, it depends upon the person, what we're barbecuing or grilling or smoking, and really what kind of taste, or if anybody really cares. I mean, sometimes I've been clean and sober for 15 years, so that's kind of tough for me not to say, "Hey, I don't stand around my barbecue with a beer," but it is what it is. So,
Hmm. Hmm.
especially when I'm marinating ribs with a beer base or something,
Oh yeah, very.
So
I'm sure that's difficult. It's. I feel that the the wood used for barbecuing, I mean grilling for chips and smoking, is underutilized as industry, very niche in the firewood realm, to charge a premium for your oak, your hickory, your cherry, your apple woods, etc., that would be used in that type of cooking style. And definitely there are professionals out there and YouTubers that have gone into that niche market, but I think it's definitely it's untapped. And if you can find a way, based on your own resources, to sell it at benefit your region, I think uh, it's time and money, um, uh, uh, well spent, and you could definitely make it a lot with what you have.
yeah, you are exactly correct with that, Travis, because when I source with my suppliers, and like I said, I'm just starting out. So any of all y'all guys, suppliers in Missouri or in around St. Louis area, that are suppliers, I'm willing to work with everybody. And but as far as like the specialty woods of hickory, oak we use, but oak we use all the time anyway. It's a hardwood. So but as far as me and with my culinary background, it's just something that I kind of accidentally fell into. And you know, um, somebody just said, "Hey, you know what you're talking about with this stuff." And I had one of my very first suppliers and very first like truckload of wood that I had came in. It was kind of punky. It was cherry and it kind of had some mushrooms and kind of some punky. It wasn't not really, I wouldn't say like totally gone. I think you did an episode on that where it was not, it's still good wood, but it's not, right there.
Hmm.
And so I spent a lot of time cleaning that up for cherry. And I think even in our group in Real Firewood Sellers, I think I mentioned that and put it up, and somebody was like, send it, send it. It looks good for me,
Yeah.
and so as far as like my customer base of what I would like to have is that kind of market and folks that are doing the competitive cooking stuff and maybe restaurants, but not really at quite right now with restaurants, but because I'm still real small scale and starting out, but I'm not also overlooking anybody who wants to have a couple of bundles for a night in just for a fire, in our uh, enjoying ours here in the Midwest. We like to be outside. We like our fire pits and our burn barrels and stuff. So
Hmm.
outdoor fireplaces and outdoor kitchens and stuff, pizza ovens. So when you get into that kinds of stuff, especially fire pits and outdoor fireplaces and stuff, that's you're probably not going to want to buy premium, cherry
Hmm.
pecan, because it is more expensive. But I always like to kind of say, hey, if I'll throw in a piece of cherry or a couple pieces of cherry in a hardwood bundle if I know somebody's going to do it, have a fire like for over the weekend for a holiday or something. It makes your house smell good.
Hmm.
So I think another Firewood Addict on YouTube and Woodhound uh, had said, know your customer base. And I think he even went as far as saying, hey, if you do this or if you want that or you want this, you're not going to be you're not my customer. And he didn't say that in a derogatory way. He just said that, you know, I specialize in the smaller stuff or doing this or doing that. And that's kind of what I'm doing and aim to do. I think I probably mentioned to you and for everybody out there, I'm not new to firewood and I'm not new to business. I'm just new to the firewood business.
Okay.
So I'm willing to learn and any comments, any I love some of the sections you have on your shows where you say, hey, put it in the comments, let me know, so yeah.
And this is why I wanted to start this podcast is to interview people, because if you're into firewood, you have knowledge. You have a level of knowledge, whether that's like you've been doing it for 20 plus years or you've been doing it for a month, you have a level of knowledge. And I want to give a platform to people to be able to share that knowledge, share it, and then people can listen to it. And then to say what is right or wrong. It's just how we do things in our region based on our own resources, our own time, and just going to share knowledge in a way that is helpful without any judgment thrown there. So thank you again for being on the episode, Jim. I'm going to table um, continuing on this little side a topic of smoking wood and come back to that
Sure.
because I want to make sure that the viewers understand what you're selling, how you're selling, and in what volume, and maybe potentially what prices you're at. too. So I'll come back to that question, but I wanted to ask before I dive into meat of this um, conversation. Um, how did you become a firewood addict? When did you realize that you were, or how did it evolve? I'm curious. What's your story?
I, as I said, I'm not new to firewood. My family, my mom and dad, my grandfathers, uncles and aunts, where everybody back in the day always had a fireplace. And so my family on my dad's side had a farm, and it's been long gone, but there was remnants through the decades. And as that property was sold, my grandfather would harvest timber off of it and cut up for his own and family. And then we also had it was always exciting for me too, because back in the day we had guys that would come down the street in the fall and knock on doors, and anybody who had a chimney and say, hey, you want to buy some firewood, and we can stack it or dump it in the driveway. My dad would always pick up some, and so I would stack it. And I learned how to use the axe and maul and stacking, and it always tended to be that I was the guy stacking it. So, being the young kid, but I always was able to use an axe and a maul. My grandpa showed me that. My grandpa actually showed me how to use an old Craftsman chainsaw, and that's kind of how it was. And I was always excited about it. And I've always kind of done yard work and small agricultural farm type work. And so that's kind of why I'm in the landscaping part time. But certainly the firewood addict and wood hound I am. I like firewood way more than I like cutting grass.
I hear you. I hear you. Same way. Same way.
Yeah, yeah. So, So I just have always liked it. My mom and dad, we built a log cabin in Southwest Missouri, and I like wood. I mean, from tree um, to the fire or whatever you may be building with it. I like wood. I mean, it's warm, it's cozy, it's fuel, it's whatever we need it to be. It's a natural, renewable resource. And yeah, I'm sure, like you said, in the comments, somebody's going to be saying, "Hey, well, why are you cutting down our trees? Hey, you're killing them by, whatever." My answer to that is especially when you see like loggers and clearing big hillsides and stuff, there's a reason, as you know, there's a reason why those trees are being taken down. And whether they're ash trees here in the Midwest have been devastated by Asian boars,
Yeah.
and oaks have been subject to carpenter ants, that kinds of thing. And sometimes a tree just gets past its lifetime. And some folks will say, no, trees will live for hundreds of years. Correct, true for some species, but unfortunately not all. So, we've got to be able to take those trees down, a dead or dying or diseased tree down, and be able to make new room for newer, better trees for the next generation and the next, ones to come in, and be conscious of the environment too, as far as what we're doing with that too. So yeah, I I think one of your episodes when you were talking about this, you had mentioned, hey, if you eat, sleep, and wake up in the morning thinking about firewood and doing firewood, I want to talk to you. And I was like, my wife was sitting here and she watched that video and she was like, you should call him. You should talk to him. And I was like, yeah,
Love it.
I should.
Love it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely
So,
a weird feeling, but I don't think it would be on the spectrum of having it be a a disorder per se, or a bad thing. I think that being a firewood addict, I think is healthy to be outside, active, and it's a workout. Whatever you're doing, to have a chainsaw in your hand, to an axe, or having to put a bundle of firewood on your arm so you can carry it to the stack to stack it. You're active. You're not sitting at the office having to type away doing numbers, whatever you're doing. You're outside and that is exercise. That's good for the body and the mind. So I can't think of a way that being a firewood addict is a bad thing until the point where possibly all your time is spent on firewood and you neglect your family or your work or I don't know what else, but then you may have some problems and we may need to have to put you in some sort of program. And if that's the case, then we can work with you. but but
I'll cure
I
you.
can't right? You're healed. But thank you for sharing your story of how you became a
Sure.
firewood addict. I'm glad that you're here on this episode. Let's start into the meat and potatoes of the conversation. And without further ado, can you confirm with us, Jim? Do you burn firewood in your own home? And if you do, is it for pleasure or for heat? And for, as well as for how long have you done that for?
Uh, Currently, the house my wife and I live in right now, we don't have a fireplace. At our lake home, we do, and we do burn it for effect and pleasure. But it also helps heat the room and the place that the cabinet's in. The logs, again, are firewood, but logs on firewood, those, but as you know, they'll expand and contract, and they're great insulators. So if like this time of year we go down and open the place up, and it's one of the first things we do is fire up a fire, and so that the logs will warm up, and once it gets warm in there, it's great. So but I don't have a fireplace here in my home, but we do have a fire pit outside, and my son has a fire pit. Matter of fact, him and his wife, they bought a new home just last year in August, and it was brand new. And one of the things that him and his wife were at a little a shaky part of what one wanted and what the other one didn't in their new home. So he sacrificed some things just so he could have a nice patio and a fire pit outside. So he was like, "Well, Dad, so I'm going to need some wood." So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
so I don't have it right now, right here, but again, with barbecue and fireplace wise, with barbecue, fire pit, and that kind of thing, yeah.
So for personal use between fire pit outside and your cabin stove, etc., how much either a face cord or third of a cord or cords would you say that you go through each year from January to December, not necessarily the cold season, because I'm sure you burn your wood throughout the summer too.
Yeah, we do here in the Midwest. Yeah, we do. And I would probably say about a little more over a face cord, maybe half a cord, maybe a cord. It would kind of depend upon where we're dragging it to. I mean, we have a lot of it on our property at the lake. We not only do we have that fireplace and stove inside, but we also have a fire pit outside. So whether if it's 100 degrees outside or 80 degrees outside, or nice evening, especially in the fall or springtime or summer, we're down by the water with the fire pit, and then vice versa in the fall and winter, we're inside with the fireplace, and even outside. It's not unusual for me and my family to have a fire pit outside, or have a family gathering and have a fire pit and have a fire either in a fireplace or a fire pit outside. So I would probably say altogether, probably maybe about half a cord. So
Not too bad.
um,
Okay,
yeah,
right on. And then I assume that you would go to your lake cabin house during the winter time when it's cold, right? So when you
yep.
go there and you fire up your wood stove, can you confirm with all of us that there's nothing like wood heat? You can't beat that, right?
Yeah, I'll confirm that totally. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It is. Yeah, it definitely. I can confirm that. Yeah. So
I had the opportunity to start to cut you off. I grew up with wood heat, and I'm able to heat my home that is 2 stories from the basement up, and it's just amazing. Just everything warms up, the walls, the furniture, everything warms up to where I can put the damper in at nighttime and wake up and it's still warm in the house and not cold. Yes, I do have a heat pump upstairs and the wall heaters, but for the most part, um, that that wood heat is just, you can't beat it, and there's nothing like it, and you cannot substitute it. The full stop. Period. Right.
Yeah, yeah, I perfectly agree. Yeah, and the folks that are burning wood boilers
Hmm.
outside and have unlimited hot water is great. You know, and you just can't beat it can't beat the heat. You know, so it's yeah. I mean, it's really a good thing, and I know that it takes a lot of tending. I guess you have to, source. Your a lot of folks even use green stuff in their boilers because they're putting it out. But yeah, I would definitely say, yeah, you just can't beat the wood heat. And I like the addict the wood addict I like tended to them. You know, you have to get up and put another log on the fire. I think someone else on YouTube had mentioned, hey, I like to have a fireplace, and somebody, a family member or my wife or my spouse said, hey, let's put in a gas fireplace, and he kind of refused it because he said it just gives me a excuse to get out of my chair and get up and get another log and grab a beer while I'm doing it. So yeah,
Hmm.
either way, the wood heat is, and it's efficient too. It is efficient. So
I agree. I feel a lot of us addicts come as it gets warmer in the year now, March and April, that I think we're going to be burning. If we do burn inside our homes, that we will be burning less, or maybe like to burn like some softer woods perhaps, because it's not that cold outside, to the point where we
mhm.
won't be burning at all. And I think throughout that time frame, seasonal, that a lot of addicts may have withdrawals of going out to the stack of wood, putting it in a wheelbarrow or your cart or your arm, coming back inside, putting it next to your wood stove or your fireplace, and tending to it. What else are you gonna do? I know I had to fill that void. What I don't. It's. I think we need to have more of a subgroup of during the summertime when you're not burning inside, some sort of group to make sure that we don't go crazy.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Fire pits anonymous. You know.
There you go. There you go,
Yeah.
Jim.
I
That's
mean,
funny. I love
my
it.
name is Jim and I have a fire pit. You know.
That's
So
funny. um. Well, okay, great. So so that was a good tangent. Great. Let's move on to the next question. So here's what I wanted to come back to before, Jim. It sounds like you do sell firewood, and I want to know um how much firewood you are selling, if you can give an estimate volume wise, cord wise, perhaps, what you sell, and you can go into what species as well, perhaps for us, and how do you sell it? Is it by the truckload, or you mentioned bundles before? Are you chipping it up to chips for your barbecue? How do you sell your wood? Go ahead.
right now, unfortunately, I'm at a big goose egg because I'm just starting out. I
Hmm.
just picked up my very first client that I will deliver to um, on Sunday. Um, so I'm just getting rolling with this. And like I mentioned to you earlier, I haven't really been able to have time to really put myself out on a scale, and it because I'm real small time and I'm limited with space. I'm kind of taking it real slow and kind of some of the folks that have mentioned it and put it out and shared it on Facebook or whatever, I've gotten a lot of positive feedback. And sure, somebody says, hey, do you just have some pieces? I just have a little fire thing going. I have some folks coming over tonight. Sure. And so, as far as what I have sold, I have just made like my first sale, and he ordered a 4x4 stack of specialty wood, which was because he does smoke with it. he ordered hickory, maple, and hickory, maple, and pecan, but I was unable to get the pecan on this short of notice. So he offered to be able to substitute for oak. So that's what I did. And he is kind of, and it's kind of another segue in is he's like myself, he's just kind of starting out with his own catering business and barbecue business. So I love that. I mean, I love helping other folks and getting to know people and what they're doing. And when he gave me a call and said, "Hey, this is what I'm doing," and as a chef, you know what I'm doing, but I'm not a firewood guy, so I just know what I like to cook with, and so I don't really have the room to be able to have cords of stuff, cords of wood. He was like, I'd love to fill my backyard with just cords of fine firewood for my barbecue, but he said my dogs and my wife wouldn't like that very well. So
Yeah.
he was like, what would you suggest to be able to get me through a couple of weeks as I'm doing it? And I also learned, I think, from one of your episodes of another episode from a few other guys on YouTube about knowing your customer and asking the right questions. And so I did. And like I kind of mentioned to you before about we were both speaking the kind of same language. So I knew that it, by asking him that about the logistics, that he wouldn't have a lot of room to be able to have a cord or a whole face cord. So I suggested to him as he was just kind of starting out to do a 4x4 stack of mixed. So of mixed. So outside of the pecan, I've set him up with hickory, maple, and the oak. And so, and what I do is again with the Firewood Addict that I do, and it kind of goes against what I think maybe you said. A lot of guys said the more you touch your firewood, the longer it takes and the less money you're going to make.
Hmm.
But I like to work it and clean it up. So, when somebody says, when a supplier says, "Hey, I got a load of boiler wood or I got a load of some punky stuff," and I don't know what I'm going to do with it, or free
Hmm.
firewood or something, you know,
Hmm.
I'll be on board to take it because I have the time and the resources to be able to clean that up, cut it to length, and cut into chunks, um, and that kind of stuff. Like I mentioned before, the first load of cherry I had gotten was punky, and so as I went through it and I cleaned it up, I had a lot of off-fall that just had good wood to it, but it just wasn't prime stuff. So I cut
Hmm.
that stuff up into chunks, and so I'll offer that in chunks. And so as I move forward, this is something that I hope will take the place of cutting grass in the future. And I don't, as I mentioned to you before, you can certainly call me if you would like bulk wood, but I'm probably going to refer you to somebody else to be able to do that. So I'm where I would like to do small quantities and bundles. So bundles of hardwood and specific bundles. So a bundle of wood for if you're smoking or if you're grilling or if you're eating with it. A bundle if it's just recreational firewood, if you're just going to be outside, for a family gathering or whatever, an evening or so, or at this time of year, we're here in the Midwest where the weather fluctuates. It could be 80 degrees and rain, snow, and hail and tornado under the arch every hour on the hour. Um, at the same
Hmm.
time, or be 20 degrees and you and your spouse or whoever or kids are you're doing a Netflix and chill and you're just inside and you want to have a little fire but you don't want to have to go buy a huge amount from a supplier, and
Hmm.
or you don't have enough going to the filling station and grabbing one of those little bundles and paying a large amount for those bundles that don't have much in them. Now, I think you probably know the controversy with bundles of how small you make that wood and how much you put in those.
Hmm.
Some
Hmm.
guys I want to make sure that I don't put as much in there because I want them coming back time and time again. That's a good idea especially from a business concept. Sure, of course, but then again, I don't want somebody to say, hey, I don't want to put my name on something that is a bundle that has got 4 or 5 sticks in it, and somebody was like, open it up when they're all jazzed up about having a little fire, or have people coming up and zip it open and be like, what did I just pay for? I mean, what
Mm-hmm.
is this? You know, this is gonna last me like 1 minute. So yeah. Yeah. So, but yeah, I want to do, and I'm aiming, and I do actually have some that I have up and ready to go. And like I said, this first order that it goes out on Sunday. So yeah, small quantities, but specific. So really a niche, and with the bundles and that kind of thing. And if I mean, I'll do a face cord, but any more than a face cord, I will probably refer you to one of my suppliers. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
I hear you in terms of knowing your market enough and knowing what you want to sell. And not all firewood addicts sell wood. It's just
right,
maybe a few or a half, or it's not you don't have to be to sell wood to be an addict. You can burn wood or just like firewood in general to be an addict. Only some of us will sell. So just to put that out there for everyone watching, it sounds like you know your niche market and what you want to sell, and you're going to stick to that. And to refer, if you feel want large quantities, like you said, to or whatever that you don't want to sell, then to have someone to refer to. I have the issue with, since I don't sell in larger quantities, I don't really have anyone who I trust that sells large quantity of wood that is of the quality of wood that I sell. They're going to be selling something that's going to be between like 20 inches long to like 12 inches long. It's going to be big, like boiler size, to like branches. It's going to be across the board. It's hard to find people to refer to. And right now I'm at a loss of who I can or could. I had one guy, but I think he's out of wood already, and he's trying to catch up for next cold season. But I think that your experience, Jim, in the culinary realm, and knowing and with your subculture of the U.S. in smoking and barbecuing, matched with firewood background, gives you definitely the expertise to sell to restaurants, to sell to the weekend warriors wanting to grill, barbecue, smoke meats on the weekends, etc. And definitely, I would feel that you would have a market year round, not only seasonal. So I would love to touch base with you in the coming months, or maybe within hopefully the channel's on for more than a year, but within a year's time, to see where you're at in terms of selling wood, and your buyers, either restaurants, how many restaurants hopefully that you've had increased in the coming months. But cool, awesome. I want to move on because I know that we are
sure,
some good information that you're sharing, but I know that we're running out of time. So let's move
sure,
on real quick. Um,
sure.
you may not know this or know this, but for a third of a cord, do you know what it's going for selling wise in your area? And does that differ if it's a softer wood or specialty wood or hardwood?
Yeah, a third of a cord. I think we're talking like I think we're talking like a face cord. I think. Um, then yeah, we're going here, at least in St. Louis, we're going anywhere from about $85. And I'm talking about the surrounding areas. With us, we're going between about 80, sometimes even, well, between about 75, 80, all the way up to like 120. Sometimes even more. And that's just pretty much hardwood, just oak and ash and whatever it is, and then maybe some softwood mixed in. And then as far as when we get into the prime stuff, like hickory and ash, and or not ash, but hickory, cherry, apple, all the specialty woods and stuff like that, then we're going to pay a lot more for that. So I would probably say I've seen a wheelbarrow full of cherry that was maybe 14 to 16 inches for $45. So yeah, it's
Mm.
really that's about where we're at. And bundles, depending upon it really what's in it or what you would like to be able to do with it, are going between sometimes $5 and $12, that kind of thing. So my bundles that I'm putting together are pretty simple hardwood stuff, but I have a decent mix in there of ash, oak, some hackberry,
Mhm.
maybe some hedge to be able to fill up the bundle. But that's for recreational stuff outside fire pits and stuff. So I would have like, I'd probably have like $10 on that. I know that now with technology and everything, you have Venmo and all that kinds of stuff, which is fine. I don't have that kind of thing as of yet, but I just from my own business experience, I like to stay with even numbers. So
Mhm.
5, 10, 15, 20, 25. I like to stay with those even numbers because when you're dealing with cash customers, it's easier for them to do that than have a $8.25 bundle or an $8.75 bundle. And then they put in, a 10 and say, oh, well, I'm going to grab a few more logs or whatever, or I
Mhm.
can't, I'm not going to buy the bundle. Oh, you got an extra $3 or $4? No, I don't. Especially when you're at firewood stands or you're at the lake. And ultimately, I'd love to be able to have a firewood stand down there. But right now, I like to stick with the even numbers with my bundles and small stacks and stuff like that.
I agree. I think having a round number like that in terms of the denominations of our currency, it's easier to have like a 5, put it in the cash box, to put it in your hand, and then you get a bundle of wood or a 10 or whatever, as opposed to like you said, like 8.25. It doesn't drive well when you're paying cash. When you're at the supermarket or the store, that's one thing. You pay with a card, but with having it be cash only, I would love to increase the amount of money that I'm charging for my bundles based on inflation and gas prices, etc. But
Exactly.
it just, I think it would turn people away if I put it up $2 to $7 for a firewood bundle. Well, no one's gonna have ones. Like people hardly have cash, but they do have cash. It's gonna be a 5 or a 10 or a 20 type
Right.
thing. I do use Venmo, and I try to use it discreetly, just to for the ease of my customers for at the firewood stand. But I know not everyone wants Venmo or having to be traded or whatever on your phone, and that's fine. I just, like you said before, just now, the round number is easy to pull up from your wallet and pay because people are not like I've had people pay me in quarters, like that. Like it was like two ones and then quarters, and it's money. They paid. I'd rather have people pay me than not pay me, or pay me a portion of what they owe me and not the full amount. But I don't really want quarters, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, me either. I think you had an episode where you went up to your cash box and somebody had their little card in there or whatever, their little debit card or, a few cigarettes or something in there, okay, I get it, but, come on, and I think the only real exception to that rule is if you're a returning customer, because I know I do this on my landscaping side. And my joke is on the landscaping side, your money's always good with me because I know where you live. And it's
Exactly.
just a joke, but it's getting to know your clients and your customers. And if I have repeat customers and even somebody who says, hey, Jim, can I just buy a couple bundles here, but I'm short on cash. Can I write you a check or, whatever? Sure. I'm good with that. Money's okay. Your money's green especially if I get to know you, your returning customer. And ideally,
Hmm.
I like that. I like to be able to talk to my customers. I like to be able to know who they are and what they like and what they do and what they're doing with the firewood. And like on my landscaping side, what you're doing with your yard. Of course, are you just doing beautification? Do you have a backyard that you got your dogs running around and you don't care? Or, your front yard is where, you got your grandkids running around where you sit out. It all depends. And of course, where your budget is too, of what you want. So, but unfortunately, just like in the landscaping side of firewood's same way, I'm sure, is we can't just take our little fingers with some dust and make it happen. So
Yeah.
yeah.
I yes, you are correct, and I agree. To build rapport with your customers, especially ones that are return customers, get to know what they want, so you can give them more so what they need. Maybe they like one wood, but then you don't have that wood, so they kind of like what Chris says on his channel to have experiment with other woods, type thing. At my firewood stand, sometimes I have customers I have never met them ever. They come, they buy wood, and they go, and they've been buying wood for me so for a year because I see them in my cameras. I notice the car, and that's okay too. Some in
Yep.
terms of like a firewood stand, as long as they're paying, they know what they want. They know the stand's usually stocked. They come, and as long as they pay, I'm cool with that. So I guess to find that balance, and I feel that be communicative with customers, either the repeat customers or new customers, to the point where it's almost annoying via text or phone call, whatever, to make sure that you are transparent with what you're selling, will answer questions, so you make sure that your customer is happy with the sale. It could be a $5 sale, sure, but if they come back and again, that $5 compounded when they buy from you and not and nowhere else will benefit you in the long run. I feel
Sure.
so.
Yeah, yeah, I perfectly agree. And I think one of your episodes on your channel, you talked about business cards. And back in the very day when I had a printing and mailing and shipping business, I was one of my dad's real good friends was a self-employed businessman, and he was kind of his name was Frank, and he was kind of Frank business Frank 101 and business wise. And one of his very first things he very first told me, I was a very extreme introvert, and one of the things he told me is, Jimmy, but Jim, you're gonna have to be able to walk up to somebody, shake their hand, and say, "Hey, I'm Jim," and I don't know how many people out there like The Office or have seen The Office when Phyllis dates Bob Vance, and he comes in and every person he meets is Bob Vance. Bob Vance refrigeration.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, Travis does firewood.
Mhm.
Jim, and my company name or anything, and you hand out those 2 or 3 cards, and you have the basic information on your card at the front, and then he always taught me, flip that card over and put 3 or 4 bullet points of what you do specifically, what you specialize doing,
Mhm.
of what you're different from the other guy. Because the other guy, there's everybody and their Uncle Johnny doing what we do or what you do or whatever industry or whatever business you're in. Everybody is doing it. Everybody is, whatever that is. You have a lot of competitors or a lot of people that are you're trying to do. And so anything that puts you up front and can flip over that business card or say, oh yeah, hey man, hey, yeah, I got that business card, or hey, I got to dig through my phone to find a contact or whatever, or I don't know,
Mhm.
there it is,
I
so
feel that business cards is definitely old school. That you take it, you lose it it's in your pocket, in your truck or whatever your car. But I think a lot of us still having something tangible in your hand to keep, to put on the refrigerator or your cork board in your office or what your den, or to you take two cards and you keep one for yourself and you hand it to a coworker or a neighbor because you know that they will benefit from your service, either landscaping or your handyman or firewood. Um, yeah, I mean to buy them, I think is a small cost of doing business and marketing. I don't. Yeah, it's something, but I do feel having just that tangible thing in your hand, and like you said, on the flip side of my card, at least, I do have the bullet points of what I sell, and then I have the QR code of the channel and then the Venmo. So if they're somewhere in my local area and they know they're going to be coming to the stand that day to pick up whatever wood, they can pay me en route. So it's already done. Just the ease of it all. But yeah, I think that marketing is definitely a good tool. I may get into marketing in another portion of
Sure,
this podcast, but
sure.
because that could be a whole different discussion with all addicts, I think, who do sell, for
Yep.
sure. Let me get into um what is in your area, Jim, or your experience. What is the best wood to burn and why, and what is the worst wood to burn in terms of species and why?
I would say it again, it goes back to what you're going to use it for. As far as outside fire pits and recreational firewood, campgrounds and, camping or whatever you're doing outdoors, I would probably say any kind of softwood or hardwood mix is okay. When you're outside is fine. So oak, you know, hedge, ash. We have an abundance of ash here in Missouri, and so and when we can mix that in, and then I will mix that in with my bundles with some oak and that kind of thing. So as far as like the best kind to do, as far as like fires inside, obviously if you are just having just a basic fire inside, obviously probably some kind of hardwood, oak, uh, maybe hickory, ash, that kind of thing for a fire inside. If it's just recreational stuff and you're outside, um, I'd probably say, ash, oak, maybe some maple, silver maple, any kind of hedge, stuff like that, are all good to be able to burn. What I would discourage anybody for as far as species of burning is, and I know folks that do it, but I would discourage anybody from just taking down a fence line with a lot of overgrowth and crap and throwing it in on your barbecue or in your fireplace or even in your fire pit, even if you're going to be doing like marshmallows with the grandkids or something, because there is a lot of stuff that you can burn up that isn't good for you at all, and
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
it can actually make you sick. So obviously there's lots of different kinds of species that are not good to burn. Here in Missouri, at least, we try to shy away from pine and um, that kinds of stuff, the cedars and kind of thing. Um, but me personally, as far as outside and using it for kindling, pine is fine as long as it's dry. I mean, you guys use it up there. So,
Mm-hmm.
as long as it's dry and, and if you're using it all the time, okay. But you're going to have the maintenance on your chimneys and your firebox. But here in Missouri, pine is fine as long as it's dry and you're vigilant about your chimneys and your pipes and that kinds of thing if you're going to burn it all the time. But as far as throwing it on the fire pit or throwing a piece in the fire or starting with kindling, it's fine. As far as barbecuing with it or that kind of thing, probably not so much.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Not so
bet.
much.
I bet. I
Yeah,
got you.
yeah,
Yeah. It's good to know what you're burning, not just take whatever scrap branches or whatever in the yard or in the woods. That, and some people do burn pallets, and that's fine. But some pallets, as we know, they've been soaked in a chemical, they've been branded, and to be travel overseas, etc. And you don't want to burn that inside for sure, especially outside sometimes too, because that could waft up, and you have kids around or dogs or pets, whatever. It's just to stay away from it. Or if you know what you're looking at for the pallet and you know it's not been treated at all, for sure, go ahead, burn that. But if it has any branding on it, or you don't know what the colors mean, I would stay away because it's not worth the free pallet wood behind the supermarket. Yeah.
Sure, and I would agree. And this kind of goes back to what you and I were talking about a little bit ago about knowing our species, and talking to your professional. And I know there's maybe it's a stereotype of a fire guy, an old boy with a busted up truck and a plaid shirt, and a hat. But talk to him, because maybe he's got some cedar that's dry and it's nice, and you went and you splurged, and it's your wife's birthday or your birthday or whatever, and they love salmon, and you went and you bought a beautiful piece of salmon, and you want to put that on the grill with a nice piece of cedar.
Yeah.
Yeah, so talk to your firewood professional, or ask somebody. Heck, with technology, you can Google it, and it'll give you a kabillion different ideas or species of what to do. But if I would definitely, outside of just burning like in a big pile, if you're getting rid of brush or whatever, that's one thing. But I would definitely be very vigilant about what you're burning, especially around your family, on your barbecue pit, inside,
Hmm.
that kind of thing.
Good advice. Good advice, Jim. I like it. I think you may have confirmed this earlier in our conversation, but I want to make sure, in your area, what do you call a third of a chord? Is it a rick? Is it row? Is it face chord? A chocolate? What do you call it there?
Yeah, unfortunately, it's a lot of times we call it it's been called a rank or a rick, and you get into technical terms, and what the state of Missouri will tell you should be selling as what. That's
Hmm.
one thing. A chord, a face chord, quarter of a chord, half chord, that kind of thing. Me personally, I would probably say 4 by 8, 4 foot high by 8 foot long, by commonly here in Missouri is 16 inches wide, would concentrate of a third of a chord, which would be a face chord.
Hmm.
So, yeah. So, and as you, unfortunately, it's not a brilliant math whiz and with fractions, but as you go down the line into like a quarter, then you get into the 4 by 4 stacks, or a 2 by stack. But it kind of depends upon how you're cutting it. And some suppliers, some guys, say I don't cut it more than 18 inches or less than 16 inches, or I won't touch a piece around that's not 20 inches, or I do 22 inches and that's it. The length kind of depends, but basically for the state of Missouri wise conservation department, at least, yeah, we're at 16 inches wide. So for a row 4 by 8.
Yeah, I gotcha. I think this with having it be with standard dimensions is common. But I find it fascinating the different terminology of what you would call a third of a chord. And I'm sure, and there are like debates about this on social media or amongst groups with who do firewood of what to call it. And I mean, you can call it anything you want, but in terms of the dimensions, a third of a chord is a third of a chord. So
Right.
that's what you're going to be burning. That's what you're going to be selling. They're not arguing about that point. Like you can debate all you want, what you want to call specifically whatever in your region. But I do find it fascinating the different terminology used of what you would call a third of a chord based on where you live, either in the region of North America or worldwide. It's super cool to me at least. Um, Next
You
question. Yeah, so go ahead, Jim. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say you are right, and sometimes with the language that we know as far as suppliers and retailers, probably they're not your customer base as general, probably wouldn't know that terminology, but they would probably know a quarter of a chord, a face chord, whole chord, that kind of thing.
I agree.
Versus
I agree.
saying, oh, well, I'm going to sell you a rick or rank. or row. Well, what is that?
Exactly.
Yep,
Exactly. Yeah.
yep.
Um, in your experience, do you prefer or have had a background in using either an electric or a gas powered splitter?
Unfortunately, both. Right now, I'm on when electric splitter that's currently locked up. So I bought it secondhand, so it was fine. And actually, I bought it almost a year ago, and I bought it specifically so that we could use at our lake home because we had an abundance of rounds and pieces that needed to be cut up and split and gone through and that kind of thing. So I bought it to be able to use down there. And that's kind of when I kind of had the idea of, hey, wait a minute, maybe I can do something with this. And so I've been using it probably way past its limits as far as electric, but it's gotten through some pretty tough stuff. So it's a good piece, but ideally moving forward, I'm going to have to move on up like the Jeffersons and get into a gas splitter. So, but yeah, I do have some experience with gas splitters, and again, old school, but yeah, both. So,
Gotcha. Thank you. Or how about this? Now or in the past, or maybe both, what is your preference? Do you throw your wood in a pile and leave it? Do you stack it? Both, and maybe do you cover it?
another great debate. Um,
Right?
yeah, me personally, I like to stack it because I want to know what it is, how it is, what it looks like, what it feels like, what it smells like, what it's going to do for my customers. And it dries quicker. And it's easier to measure. It's just easier to deal with and measure. The only real exception out of that is I would say if you're doing, if you're a supplier, you're a big firewood producer, and you're coming right off your machines into a conveyor in the big stacks, sure, and again, as there's the great debate of, oh, loose thrown in pile dries quicker than a stack or crisscross stack, or I don't have the room for that, or only the wood on the outside of that pile is gonna dry. um I don't know. It's a tough, but for me personally, I like to stack it because I know what it is, and I know I like to get my hands on it and see. But it's a point of measurement for me. I know how much I have, and it's also a point of management for my suppliers and folks that would like to contact me about supplying too. Is I am going to ask that. I am going to ask if you have your wood in piles or bags, or however you're drying it. I will ask that, and because I don't want to have to order in bulk and end up with a bucket from the bottom of the pile with dirt and crap and all wet and moldy and rotted wood that's
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
good for nothing besides throwing in the compost pile. So yeah, it's and I also I'm sure like a lot of guys out there, guys and gals, sorry, I like to use skids, and here in the Midwest, I even put them on like bricks or put the skids up a little bit off the ground. Anything to keep that wood off the ground is going to be good, and at least like right now, what I have is, what I'm processing now is on my driveway at least. And as quickly as I can get through it and get it split and stacked, the better off it's going to be. And I'll even go as far as to be able to loose stack it. So instead of getting it real tight in for measurement, I'll loose
Mm-hmm.
stack it so that the sun and the air can get to it. And I know that's another whole episode, I'm sure, about kiln drying firewood and quick dry firewood versus air dry and species and how long they take and stuff. So
Mm-hmm.
me personally, I like to stack it. So
Your points, I feel, are definitely valid, and that works for you. And I'm sure you tried other methods, but I, that is a on point. I think I don't stack tight. I guess indirectly it makes sense in terms of airflow. So it's not everything will have access to air. I think I stack loose because I'm lazy. I don't
Yeah.
when I'm doing making bundles, I'll I'll play Tetris with the wood so it all fits, right? But when I'm
Yeah.
stacking, I want to have to throw it on there and it's not gonna fall back on me. I'll just keep stacking. I don't want to have to play with it. So I think you're on something there for sure. Um,
Yeah. I don't particularly like the stack either, but I do like a pile there when I'm doing bundles and playing Tetris and stuff. Again, that feeds into our addiction. But as far as covering it, I don't I don't like to cover the season stuff all together for a long time. So if I know, again, like we talked about the weather, if I know weather's coming and I know I have stuff going out, then I'll cover it fully to keep it dry because nobody wants wet wood. So yeah. But as far as covering like on the top, like I'll cover just the tops of my stack, especially when I have them out seasoning like right now. I'll cover just the top just to keep the rain and snow and that stuff to get down,
mhm.
soak into the wood and down into the stack. And yeah, I perfectly agree. I'll loose stack just because I'm lazy. It's a pain and I don't like doing it. But
Gotcha. Thank you for sharing. I feel that definitely it's one opinion. Not everyone's gonna agree, but that works for you in your wood yard in your backyard, and that's fine. That's okay.
yep,
Don't need to follow everyone's advice. If it works for you, right?
yep, yep.
Exactly. What is let's move on to the next question here. So I assume that you run chainsaws. If you're gonna do firewood, you have chainsaws, right? Okay, so how about this? How about this? Are we using ethanol free? Are we using premium gas or are we using regular gas from the gas station? What do you got? What do you use?
Another great debate. Um, um, Me personally, I have one chainsaw so far. It's my MS 271 Farm Boss, and I have a 18-inch bar and a 20-inch bar. I'm not on it every single day, and this kind of goes as far as like my landscape side too. If I'm not on a piece of equipment every single day all year, then I'm ethanol free can because I know firsthand what a carb looks like, all varnished over. And unless you're a guy who knows how to turn wrenches and knows how to get into these things and take care of them, and I know again people will be in the comments and great, it's your opinion, great, perfect, and I'll hear, well, you shouldn't be doing this unless you know how to work on your saws and your equipment. I agree, I perfectly agree, and it helps save money, and if you know how to do it, great. Me, I've never really been good with turning wrenches, so I take it to somebody who knows what they're doing, and I know how to maintain them. And I know just like cars too. I mean, we've come too far in advancement and technology that's kind of beyond what I know maintenance wise. So I know enough that a piece of equipment on a carb is if I'm not on it all the time, I'm going to be on ethanol fuel because it's going to save me in the long run where you can open a can and it can stay open for a long time or it can stay in that piece of equipment for a long time. And it's going to be a for sure start when I get ready to use that piece of equipment. And it's vital, especially when you get into the field and you're booking it and you're trying to make money and you go to grab a saw or something and it won't fire because you got a plug or a carb that's varnished over. And
Mhm.
again, unfortunately, because the time we're living in is the crap of gasoline, of regular gas that we're using or even premium, is it after 2 weeks it's gonna go bad, on if it's sitting in a can, and are in your equipment. And so for me, it's just worth the money to buy canned fuel if I'm not using a piece every day and for wintertime, and especially in the wintertime. And now when we really start kicking it up here in another week or so, I will go to premium gas with the oil mixes. But I do have a few pieces of equipment that, especially like my chainsaw, that I won't. The equipment's too much money to have me try to fix and fiddle with the oil gas mixture. And again, probably another great debate about, oh, well, you're running too rich or you're running too lean. Um,
Mm-hmm.
that depends upon you, how quick you're running it and what you're doing and your brand of equipment. And a lot of folks will argue that point about too, about what kind of gas goes great and what kind of piece of equipment you're using. But yeah, I wish there was a different alternative to that, but for me, there's not. So I know enough about my equipment to know how to maintain it and to know, hey, I got to get it into a professional shop, because if I go digging into it, I'm going to end up taking it to a professional shop anyway, and it's going to cost me more money.
Mm-hmm.
So,
I hear you. It's good to know your limits of where of what your knowledge and your abilities to do something, and then if it's just beyond that point, you know when to stop and
yep,
to call professionals or call someone else who knows more of what needs to happen. Like you said, because you could really mess things up, so it could
right.
cost you more. And I agree with you. It's the small things that may take a little bit more time, cost a little bit more money for preventative maintenance on your machines to make them last longer, so you're not going in the shop every other month or every season because you were you didn't do things right, perhaps, and now you're all gummed up and you can't run your saw or your whatever else. You mentioned mixing. Let me ask you this: are we buying pre-mix at the local hardware store? Or are you mixing your own mixed ratio fuels for your chainsaws and like weed eaters type engines?
For my trimmers and my chainsaw and stuff, I would. Um, up until last year, except for my chainsaws, because I'm not my chainsaw at least. I wasn't on it every day, so I did use the canned premix fuel on it. As far as my trimmers and my blowers and things like that, when I'm quick on it, and it's pretty much nonstop, I'll use premium with the oil and mix it myself. But unfortunately, I had a trimmer go down last year, and I didn't have a backup, which was on me. It was my own fault, but I took it in, and it was a shop fee just for the guy to tell me, hey, your muffler is gummed up with carbon, and that's what's leaking out of it, not oil. And so it was $100+ just for somebody to tell me that and say, hey, before you turn it off, rev it up and let it go full throttle for a few seconds or a minute, and blow that stuff out of there. Or just make it easier on yourself, spend the extra few bucks on the canned fuel and mix, because it's an older piece, and just do that instead of worrying about being finicky about getting the oil mix and the gas right. And
Mm-hmm.
but then on the flip side, like you mentioned, like my dad, he's got, I think the trimmer that he owns is an old steel, and I think Abraham Lincoln used it to trim down the old White House. I swear, it's the oldest piece of equipment I've ever seen in my life. And you could probably throw that thing around, and he uses nothing but regular gas with a oil mix, and in it, the 2-cycle basic brand, no brand basic oil 2-cycle mix. And he's done that forever, and he still does it in that thing. And it could sit in the shed for a month or more, or even over the winter, and you can pull it out with that regular gas in it, and it'll fire every time. And so it's a little bit different from old equipment to new equipment and technology. And I think too, where we're at with the kinds of fuel that we're buying, out to gas stations and stuff like that too.
Yeah, it's definitely another debate of whether you're buying premix or mixing yourself. But I think that we can all agree is they don't make them like they used to. If you can
Yep.
find an older piece of equipment or a saw, and you can still get parts for it either at the local store or eBay, and that thing, I'm sure every time you go to pull it, it will fire and it will run, and not having to
Yep.
like have to tweak the carb or make sure that your mix is just perfect for your one machine because it's brand new, but it's finicky. It is a headache. But I think that a lot of us could all agree that the older equipment, if maintained properly, then and now, will run forever. It's
Yep.
crazy.
Yep.
It's crazy.
I
I do
totally
agree.
agree. Yep.
Um, let's get into when you're measuring your rounds or your logs to cut into 16. What are you using? Are you eyeballing it or some sort of tool they're using, Jim?
Well, basically, I'm pretty much eyeballing it with the tape measure, and then I'll go along and I have a little small hand recip saw, and I'll go along the logs and I'll hit whatever length I'm gonna cut for that log, or what I'm doing, or what I'm gonna
Mm-hmm.
aim to do with the log. And that's probably, well, I'm sure it's different for everyone who's cutting, at what the length that they want and what they may be using the wood for. Is, it could be different for everybody. So basically, that's what I do. It takes a little bit more time to start out to do it. And again, I'm not out in the woods or out in the field doing it quite yet, but I'm sure it'd be a little bit different when I am. But right now, that's just really what I do. So it's quick and easy. And then sometimes I'll fire up the saw, it's already hot or whatever, and I'll just go along and eyeball it and see. And then, because I'm doing such a small quantity, it's not going to hurt too bad if I'm off just a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
I have a friend of mine who's a painter, and he's just meticulous. And recently we redid our living room and had our new paint. And I was doing some framing work, and he was painting, and he was like, "Oh, Jimmy, it's 5/16 of an inch." And I'm like, "No, get that out of your head. I'm a firewood guy, and I'm not talking to five. That's a blink of a blade, man. I mean, come on,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
forget it." So, but yeah,
Anyone who's framed before does not use sixteenths. So, um, but I hear you in terms of if it's within 16 inches or so, or half an inch, I'm okay with that. Or one thing I want to show on my channel, sometimes on a round or part of the log, at 16 inches, you'll see a branch or a knot. Well, I would prefer not cutting into that branch or knot. So I'll just go off to one side or the other. Or if I have a a round, or I guess a log that is, I need to trim down to 16, and it could be at 24, it could be at 36, or some odd length, and it won't come out even. If both pieces at 16, I'll break it even so it's like at 15/15. So that's still within the scope of 16 inches for my bundles, or what I sell at my stand, just so I can get both pieces. So one's not at 16, not one's at 10. 10 is going to be a cookie. I can't sell that at the stand. It's going to be something else for like a tote. So I think whatever works for you, selling wise, etc. Or the last guy who was on the episode last weekend, he's growing up. He cut for his own personal use for himself and his family. So they didn't have a marker. Whatever they cut it at eyeball, it could be from 18 to 22 to whatever would fit in their stove. So
yep,
it all depends. If you're selling, you're burning yourself, whatever fits in your wood stove, your fireplace. It could be anywhere, but I think to be uniform is nice for the people like us who do stack. So we'll stack nice and not be like how one is out here and one's in here and just is all over the place. So
right.
interesting what to hear people of how they measure and what works for them based on their tools in their yard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, I agree with you there, Travis, because it depends. And like you said, you may have be on every 16 inches, and then all of a sudden there's a branch or a knot or something there that you don't want to cut into, or you got a bad end that's, off the stump that's cut with a wedge or whatever. And, we're trying to make it nice and neat and professional, to be able to do it. So that's kind of why I like to do what I like to look at it and see what I'm dealing with. So, yeah. I agree with you there. So, and I really like, I think you may have seen it, or you may have it, the box wedges that make them come out the other side is real nice square pieces and stuff.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's really nice and professional. And you try to get as close as that as you can if you don't have one of those pieces. So that's what we're trying to do. So however you can achieve
Exactly.
that. So
I agree. So let's get into your chainsaw. Your farm boss. You have two bars, so I assume that you have multiple chains, obviously for both bars. Um, and you're running that just solely going from either from bucking to limbing to whatever you need to do, and maybe to noodle. Um, what CCs is that farm boss,
I think that
or do you
farm box,
know?
I'm not quite sure. I would have to dive into the handbook, but I think it's right around 52 or 50 cc's, maybe 55, something in there. I'm not quite sure, but I think, moving forward, I will jump up into a bigger saw, so I can run a bigger bar, and not just because of the power, but because I'm getting older and don't like bending over. But anything that makes it a little bit easier on the old back. But I want to be able to have the power there, and at least two different size bars that I can slap on them if I need to. And that's why I like the Farm Boss, so I can run a 20 or I can run the 18 on it. And yeah, I run steel, and actually, out of everything I do, the only piece of equipment that I have are my chainsaw and my yard boss tiller that are steel. Everything else is Echo. And so I've been asked before, how come you don't have an Echo chainsaw? I've never had my hands on it, and I wish I could. And maybe next time I go over to my dealer, maybe I'll take a look at it. But now that I've learned steel and I know steel, I'm kind of sold on it. The parts are easy to get to. They're relatively easy. And I know with the new fuel injections and stuff like the 500i, that kind of thing, great, really good. That's all a benefit. But I feel, and it's kind of the consensus is, you need to at least have two saws, going forward, even if you get one hung up or whatever, or one goes down. And I
Hmm.
like be able to have a little bit of diversity there. And that's just me when it comes to equipment and tools. Yeah, as far as like tools, just, I mean, I don't want to name drop, but red with, a white brand name from a city in Northwest, it starts with an M. Yeah, because that's a professional tool. But I also like, something else, a different brand, for whatever. So I like to be able to have the diversification in my equipment and tools, and especially with that, to be able to run a different bar, if I need to on them. So, and I know, again, that'll be another big debate about, well, why not just get a whole bunch of different saws with one bar on it? Well, yeah, I would love to if I was rich, but I'm not rich, and I would love to have more. Those suckers are really expensive, so
Hmm.
they're investments. So, you got to do what you got to do at this point. But I will work up into a bigger saw that I would probably say at or above 70 cc. So I can noodle bigger pieces, and so I can get through bigger pieces. And I'm not objected to going down a level too, like the 170 or equal, or an electric chainsaw, to be able to just cut off ends if I'm making bundles or got some bad pieces. So I haven't experienced or used any of the hatchets or small steel things yet. But it's hard for me to justify that because it's essentially a hand chainsaw. But then again, what's it gonna do that my hand recip saw can't do with a pruning blade? You know, um, so yeah.
I got you. All good points, Jim. There's there's value in a longer bar with a more powerful saw, so you're not bending over. And ideally, I think a lot of us would agree. Ideally, having two saws that would be similar in bar length and power. So if one goes to crap or you're out of gas, then you just fire up the next one and you keep rocking and rolling. So you're not having to lose that vibe. So all good points. I like it. I like it. This is definitely a good conversation, and you and I could definitely talk for a lot longer than what the episode is going to go for.
Oh
But I
yeah.
want to give you plenty of time. I think that our the people watching this, I'm sure, have picked up several pro tips of within what you're saying, um, that are subtle, but definitely and not could be like a game changer, but maybe it's not that people may not think about every day or have heard before, which I appreciate. But I want to give you the opportunity in this episode, in this podcast, at the end now, to share any other pro tips, lessons learned, best practices. It could be big or small, just to give you the platform to share knowledge with your fellow addicts.
I think it's two things. I think, and I think it both goes to safety and convenience. And I actually found the one you didn't even say it. It was on your episode. You didn't even say anything about it, but you had marked your chain type on the top of your saw. And I told my wife, I thought, that's brilliant, because when you're booking it and you're in the field and you're grabbing a file or trying to do, you may or may not automatically just realize what kind of chain you're running, and you can just go right to that file. As far as anything else, I have my own little story about safety gear and helmets. I over the holiday and Christmas, I was talking to an uncle, and we were just kind of chatting, and I told him, anything that I go above my head with, and I don't climb trees, I don't take them down anymore. But still, anything I go over my head with my pruning saw or my oscillating trimmers or anything, I wear a helmet and ear protection and gloves. I know you had a strong pair of gloves. I'm still trying to find a decent pair of gloves. But as far as the helmet and safety gear, we've all had those near misses. But last year, luckily, I was with my son, and I was taking out a branch that wasn't real high up in a gum tree, but it had crouched. A notch had fallen into the crouch, and even though everybody's advice to walk around the tree, look at the tree, know your cuts, know what you're doing, the whole thing. I did that. I scouted it out, had my son with me, everything. And I had my pole saw, and I made the cuts that I thought I was going to make. And I had my helmet on, and I made those cuts, and it just didn't move. And so I was literally just setting my pole saw down, hadn't even turned it off yet. And wham, I got hit on the top of the head, and it literally knocked my helmet off. And I'm a big guy. It knocked me to the ground. And my son was there, and even the client was there, and she was like, "Oh my gosh," and without that helmet, I probably wouldn't be talking. I mean, it would have taken my head off. I mean, it was a pretty good size branch that let go, and it was just a freak accident. But if I wouldn't have had that helmet on, it would have been bad. And so, and I can obviously attest about hearing earmuffs and that kinds of stuff when we're running equipment. Just from experience, I know my dad's an old musician, and from not having proper ear protection from playing the drums his whole life, now he can't really hear much. So eventually that's going to catch up with us. So I know I don't have a pair of chaps yet, but I am going to invest in those. And safety gear, I don't care what you're doing. If you're doing something dangerous, especially in our line of work and what we're doing, yeah, you have to have it. I mean, because it's not a matter of if an accident is going to happen, it's just a matter of when. And we just hope that everybody is okay and nobody gets seriously hurt or anybody gets hurt at all. I wish there was a way that we can prevent, anybody from getting hurt at all. But yeah, and like you said, as far as pro tips, I like to learn from everybody else, no matter how young or old you are. But definitely safety gear and really know what you're doing. I mean, know, and if you have one doubt, one question in your mind, and you haven't solved that question on YouTube or Google or whatever, go to somebody who's already had their boots on the ground. I've taught that to my sons who've been in the military for a long time is you're not going to like it when you're a boot and you're the first guy there and you're getting hazed. You're not going to like it, but those guys are doing that for a reason and you got to listen to them. And so that's kind of my thing is, if we can learn from everybody and know, and if you have a question about something, a new saw, or even if you're an experienced operator and all of a sudden you got a new saw and it's not doing something and you think, oh, well, I'm not going to ask because I'm a guy and I'm going to look like a jackass. Well, you're going to look more like a jackass when you're standing here trying to figure it out, much less making a call, asking somebody, shooting somebody an email or text to say, hey, Travis, man, man, was that pink ray really a good thing? Should I be thinking about that?
Yeah,
So,
I
but yeah,
think yeah, those are thank you for sharing, Jim. Those are all good tidbits and good yes, I do try as accurate as I can to write what file size I need to sharpen my change because it does differ per saw because I have two huskies, but even that I have a diverse array of brands, and I do need to do an episode on all my saws, not to show them off, just because each saw has a story behind it. And one of the
yep,
saws I have is from an accident. It was a widowmaker that came down on me, and I did not have a helmet at all. So at that time, so definitely, it has nothing to do with being like a real man or a real firewood person, male, female, whatever. Accidents do happen. Even pros, the arborists who are up
yep,
in the tree, to the loggers, they're wearing equipment, that safety equipment,
hmm,
gloves, goggles, ear protection, because either they're required by their employer, OSHA, or whatever else, or because they know that even the professionals who've been doing it for years and years, and with training, mistakes happen. Mistakes happen, and you could not wear it one day, and mistakes happen, and then you're maimed, you're injured from here on out for one little mistake, or because you didn't want to wear your chaps one day or whatever. Um, yeah, I would say, Jim, the next time you sell firewood, enough saved your money, use that money, buy chaps. You need chaps,
yeah,
buddy. You're gonna run your farm boss. You know this, and you know this. Buy chaps. It's
yeah,
one of those things you have to break down and do.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I know. And last year I was clearing some brush. I was doing a project. I was clearing some brush um, for a client, and I didn't see a hunk of piece of like wire that was down in this brush that I was clearing through with my boss, and it jumped back and it came across my leg and tore my pants, but it didn't get into me, but it did tear my pants. And luckily my son was with me. He was like, are you okay? Are you okay? And I'm like, yeah, I'm okay. But here's the reason why, we need to be really careful. And I think you can probably attest to this. Anybody who's running this kind of equipment can attest. We get complacent. We think, oh man, I'm ready. And as it did, we're ready. We're jazzed when we're firing those saws up. We're ready to go. But we got to be real vigilant about not getting complacent with what we're doing, no matter what we're doing, whether we're on the splitters or whether we're it doesn't matter really what we're doing, steel toes or whether we're loading or on the tractors or skid steers, or it doesn't matter. Just try not to be complacent. I know I'm guilty of it. And sometimes you just have to step back and think, this is what we're doing for whatever we're doing. And this is why we're doing it. And this is why folks are paying us money to be able to do it. So, don't get complacent.
Yeah. So this episode here will come out, will be live on the 10th, as I told Jim before. But I have an episode coming out on the 1st, which is tomorrow, in terms of our interview right now. And as you'll see in the episode, I forgot my helmet and my chaps, and I had to neuter these rounds. So it was a bad mistake on my call. I was in a rush to load the truck of all my gear to be on site to get this firewood or these rounds prepped to haul back. And it's just stupid. It's stupid to forget them, stupid to run the saw. Luckily, nothing happened in that time frame, but it's what not to do. If you're going to be on location to bring your bar oil, your fuel, your chainsaws, whatever, if you need to make a list and mark off the checklist and make sure you have everything, especially your helmet, gloves, eye protection, ear protection, and chaps. Yeah, I had in the video I put a disclaimer, but one of those things, so it happens. But yeah, I think those are all good tips and suggestions. I think that we can all agree to all of that. Jim, thank you for your time today as a fellow firewood addict. I appreciate the camaraderie and the conversation and your willingness to come on the channel and share your knowledge, experience, your insight, and your passion for firewood. I want to touch base with you in a few months to see where you're at in terms of selling for your niche market in your area. But until so go ahead and sign off, Jim, and we'll sign off together. And go ahead.
All right, thank you, Travis. It was great thank you for having me. It was great being able to talk to you, and I look forward to talking to you again.
Very welcome, Jim. All right, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. I appreciate it. Stay safe. Keep cutting. Until next time, cheers.